Entrepreneurship is fucking tough. And for many, it triggers depression and anxiety. It's a very, very personal journey where your identity can become attached to your business. And this is problematic. In this edition of Thursday's Thought, you'll learn the 4 reasons why entrepreneurs are more susceptible to experiencing depression and anxiety and what you can do about it. This topic is incredibly personal, and I truly hope you gain some insights by tuning in. Today's episode is sponsored by my advanced digital training, Unleashed and Unapologetic: How to Become a Thought Leader and Build a Cult Following. If you jam with my vibe and you are really seeking to become a recognized, purpose-driven thought leader, a sought-out expert in your industry, and you're really ready to ramp up visibility for yourself and for your mission, enroll for my You and You training today. You can find all the info and the enrollment link at rubyfremont.com/unleashed. Whether you're new to this podcast or a loyal thought leader, please take a moment right now to drop a rating and review on iTunes. Now it's time to dive into this edition of Thursday's Thought.
Welcome to today's Thought Leader, where I'm challenging you to rise up, speak up, and create a movement. I'm your host, Ruby Fremont, and I'm here as a catalyst for you, the new generation of thought leaders. Join me every week as I dive into raw and real conversations that will help you amplify your presence, influence, and impact.
Hey, thought leaders, I am back for another Thursday's Thought, and today I want to talk about depression, anxiety, and entrepreneurship. Now, I've talked about this topic a few times before on this podcast, and I'll refer to some of those episodes in just a bit. But today specifically, I want to talk about the 4 reasons why entrepreneurs are more susceptible to experiencing depression and anxiety. So if you are in the entrepreneurial space and you have other fellow entrepreneurial friends, you've most likely heard the term depression and anxiety thrown around quite a bit. We all talk about it amongst ourselves, sometimes in quiet. And this is mainly due to the fact that we are trying to create an identity for ourselves in the online space. You know, if you're someone who sees yourself as a leader and you want to be perceived as a leader, it's almost a stigma then to share that you are experiencing depression and anxiety. And yet it is rampant in our space. So many people are experiencing this. And let's first, before I go any further, let me share the 2 different scenarios that you could be dealing with this. I mean, scenario number 1 is it's an actual mental illness. You've been dealing with depression and anxiety your entire life. There are neurological reasons that you have this. It's real. It's a real mental illness. And then the second scenario is it's circumstantial. And this is what a lot of people are dealing with, is the circumstantial depression and the circumstantial anxiety. So it's stress triggering the depression and anxiety to arise. It's whatever it is that you're dealing with in your entrepreneurial endeavors that is triggering the anxiety and depression to arise. So I'm going to be talking more about the circumstantial. And because I really feel that that's what entrepreneurs are dealing with. So in my opinion, and I think you'll agree, entrepreneurship is an incredibly personal journey. I mean, I just wrote an email today. I just shared a post that said, entrepreneurship is the best personal development program out there. And that's me quoting me. It really is, right? It's the only thing that pushes you up against your edge every single fucking day. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you wear many different hats, and you're hustling and you're slaying and you're fucking doing all these things to build momentum. And it's a very, very personal journey. it becomes very difficult to separate your personal identity, like who you are, from your mission or your business. Like somehow you start to see it as it's all the same thing. You know, your business is you, your mission is you, your purpose is you. And so where do we draw the lines? Where do we separate the identity from the actual business, right? It's hard. It's hard to separate. So when we experience setbacks in our businesses, it's very likely that we will also experience personal setbacks. And vice versa. When we experience personal setbacks, it's very likely that we are going to experience setbacks in our business. And you may not see it as so. Like maybe you have a business setback. Maybe that program that you launched didn't enroll anyone. And so you keep going, you keep hustling, but you're starting to feel fatigued. You're starting to deal with adrenal fatigue. You're starting to feel depleted. Like that is a personal setback. Right? That is a personal setback. Or maybe you're dealing with something in your marriage, in your home life, that is tough. And that's going to impact the way in which you show up for your business and for your mission, right? It's going to be harder to show up on those lives and put a smile on your face and be there for your audience. It's going to be harder for you to create content because your mind is focused on so many other different things. As entrepreneurs, especially purpose-driven entrepreneurs, it is very, very difficult to separate identity from business and business from identity. So with that being said, I personally have found that there are 4 reasons why entrepreneurs are more susceptible to experiencing depression and anxiety. And I want to share those 4 reasons with you right now. So reason number 1, stress. I mean, can we just be real? Like this shit is stressful. It is so stressful. I don't care who the fuck you are. Like this shit is stressful. Okay. It's tough. We're putting ourselves out there day in and day out. We're putting in the work day in and day out. We're taking on a lot, and quite often too much, because as entrepreneurs, we can often be like high achievers. We take on a lot. We say yes to everything. It's very, very stressful. That in itself can trigger anxiety, right? You're taking on too much. You're feeling stressed out. Your nervous system is literally in fight or flight all the fucking time. And when your nervous system is in fight or flight, then it's very natural for anxiety to be triggered, okay? Because your nervous system is out of whack. When I'm talking about fight or flight, I mean, let me make this real. Say you are hosting a workshop or an event, something, and you're rushing to get everything done. And right after that workshop or an event, you've got a retreat that you're hosting. And right after that, you've got a launch of a program. Like this is like stress after stress after stress. And so you're constantly, your body, your nervous system is constantly going into fight or flight. So it's always activated. It's always on. And that's going to trigger anxiety to come up, because anxiety is really neurological, right? Depression, on the other hand, that's that like overwhelming down feeling, like it drags you down. And this can often be triggered, again, circumstantially. Your program didn't enroll, you didn't get enough people in it, or you lost a ton of money on that fucking event, or no one showed up to this whatever live that you were doing. You get sad, you get depressed, you get in a funk, and then that starts to take over. So stress is a major reason why entrepreneurs are more susceptible to experiencing depression and anxiety. The second reason is isolation. So many purpose-driven entrepreneurs are actually solopreneurs, right? Sure, we may have a VA and we may have a team, but they're not really working in our offices with us. So we spend the majority of our time alone, right? In isolation. And when we're in isolation, we are alone with our thoughts. We don't have that human connection that we are innately designed for. I mean, human beings have always lived like clans. Like if we go back into the prehistoric times, we were built to live as clans. And that's why we have family units nowadays, and families living in one household. Like this is how we are. It's in our DNA. We are built to be this way. And so when we isolate ourselves in our offices doing our own thing, we're also then isolating ourselves in our own shit, like going through something. I'm just going to pummel through this work and just like dismiss this. And we're so busy. We're keeping ourselves busy. We just don't have time to connect with people. We're isolating ourselves and taking away the connection that we innately need in order to feel like we belong somewhere, in order to feel like we are understood, we are seen, we are heard, we are acknowledged. I mean, sure, we can acknowledge ourselves, but at the end of the day, we as human beings are meant to be amongst other human beings. So isolation is the second reason. The third reason, and this is really big, especially nowadays with social media, is social presence. And what I mean by social presence is how you want to be perceived. So I know I've said this before in maybe 1 or 2 episodes, but there's a benefit to social media, right? We're in charge of our digital blueprint. Yay. We get to like control how we're seen online. Cool. And there's a negative side to this. We are in charge of our digital blueprint, right? Which means that all of that controlling can often get manipulated, and we're trying to fulfill what we believe is our audience's expectation of how we want to be perceived. Or for my listeners specifically, like all of you are here because you want to be known as thought leaders. Cool. So you have this idea in your mind that you want to be seen as a leader, and you really work your ass off to make that happen. And everything that you're doing and the way in which you're showing up, I mean, you're manipulating your social presence, and you probably don't even know it. You might not even realize this. So that's the third reason, social presence. Now, the fourth reason why entrepreneurs are more susceptible to experiencing depression and anxiety is passion for purpose. What I mean by passion for purpose is you have an attachment to the outcome, and the outcome is often tied into your self-worth. So like I said at the beginning, like it's really difficult to separate identity from business. And when that happens, it's very, very easy to attach worthiness to outcomes. So when something doesn't work out the way in which we wanted it to, we can feel down, we can get depressed, we can feel anxious because of this deep, deep passion that we have for a purpose. Like, we are mission-driven people. We understand, like, something happened, we had a major insight in our lives, and there was a moment when we were like, wow, this is my purpose. I want to fucking go after this with all that I've got. This purpose gives me purpose, right? And maybe you resonate with that. My purpose gives me purpose. My purpose is my reason for getting out of bed. My purpose is the reason why I had to go through everything that I've been through, is to do this work today. Like, wow, that is a lot of fucking pressure to put on yourself. And so this passion for purpose makes it really easy for us to get triggered, because when things don't go our way, when the outcomes we desire don't happen, we're going to feel depressed. We're going to feel anxious. So those are the 4 reasons why entrepreneurs are more susceptible to experiencing depression and anxiety. Now, I don't want to leave you just there. I want to share what you can do about this. Okay, don't worry. I'm not just going to leave you on that. So what we can do about this, what you can do about this. So reason number 1, stress. I'm going to admit this is something that I personally deal with quite a bit. I do have a mental illness, and I've had depression since I was, the earliest I can remember is around the age of 10. And you can hear more about that in episode 1. If you haven't heard the first episode of this podcast, that's where I share my story. So go back to episode 1 if you want to hear more of my story. But really, I've been dealing with a depression since about the age of 10, and anxiety. We just didn't know what it was back then. I mean, we're talking about like the 80s, and no one really talked about mental illness the way they do. And so now I have added on to that circumstantial stress, right? The circumstantial stress of running a business and being a solopreneur. And yes, I have a VA, an amazing, amazing VA at that. Hey, Michelle, Shout out to Michelle, my VA. I love her. But so much of what I do is on my own, right? Like so much of what I do is on my own. So there's a lot of stress. And the way in which we as entrepreneurs need to work through stress is to make your self-care non-negotiable. Make it non-fucking negotiable. I don't even understand how people still nowadays make self-care a negotiable thing. It has to be a non-negotiable thing. You know, for me, my self-care looks like getting up at 5 a.m, going to the gym, eating healthy, making my lunches at home, salads, making my dinners, and making sure that I close out my laptop at the end of the day with enough time to make dinner and to sit down and have dinner with my husband, downtime time at the end of the night, and off time on the weekends. Like I've done the whole working through the weekends thing, and that's how I got adrenal fatigue, you know, and I'm not willing to do that again, because what you have to understand is without you, there is no fucking purpose. Without you, there is no fucking mission. Without you, there is no business. And without you, your clients, your audience, they aren't going to experience the impact that you have to offer. So when it comes to stress, you've got to make your self-care non-negotiable and set boundaries with yourself. You know, like for me, like I say, I never take client calls past 5 p.m. because past 5 p.m., quite frankly, I'm a little brain dead. Set boundaries with yourself. Like if I need to work on the weekends, I'll set boundaries and I'll say, okay, I'm going to work, you know, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then the rest of the time I'm going to go hike or go outdoors with my husband. You have to set these boundaries for yourself. So that's how you deal with stress. So reason number 2, isolation. So what you can do about this is quite simple, co-work, right? And co-working doesn't have to be about, you know, signing up for a really fancy, expensive co-working space. It doesn't have to be like that. If you search co-working on Yelp, in your community, you'd be surprised at what you find. There are coffee shops that have co-working spaces. There are community centers with co-working spaces. And don't forget, there are real people that you know who own their own purpose-driven businesses that you can co-work with. You know, I've been to several co-working events where it's hosted at someone's house and like 5 entrepreneurs will come and we just jam out. I've also done the coffee shop thing and co-worked at coffee shops. The other thing you can do is join groups, you know, group programs or group masterminds. There's so much more that is involved with masterminds and group coaching programs than just like coaching and business and strategy. It's the connection with like minds, especially if you're joining a group program or a mastermind that is well managed. I will add that. So, be diligent with the way that you audit these before joining. Make sure that they will tend to your needs. But yeah, like masterminds are a phenomenal space for you to connect deeply with people who get you, people who see you, because they're already in this. They're in this with you. I've had several of my really close friends become close friends because of masterminds. And then of course, socializing, like get out. I can't say that enough. Get the fuck out of your house. This is something that me and my husband have to actively tell ourselves to do because we both love to hermit and we both love just being around each other. So socializing isn't always a top priority, yet it can give you that sense of connection that you're craving from all this isolation that you're giving yourself. So the third reason for depression and anxiety is social presence. So remember, this is how you want to be perceived. So the way for you to work through this is, rather than be fixated on how you want to be perceived, focus on being. Focus on being. Like, focus on being the leader that you're here to be. Focus on being who you need to be for your purpose. Focus on just being and embodying your mission and embodying your vision, and come at it from that space, because not only will you then grow as a human being because you're now focused on you versus this outwards perception, but you're also going to start to elevate your messaging and draw more of the right people into your orbit, because now you're being your message, you're embodying your message, and that is so much more powerful than just preaching it. So stop focusing on how you want to be perceived and focus on being. Now, the fourth reason why entrepreneurs experience depression and anxiety is passion for purpose. So this is the attachment to the outcome, to the self-worth, and, attaching your worthiness to the success of something. So the way to navigate through this is stop focusing on the outcome and start focusing on the impact. Because even if your program doesn't enroll, perhaps your messaging created an impact. Perhaps the way in which you showed up for that create an impact. And honestly, no one fucking knows that you didn't enroll a single soul into your program. We only know that. No one else knows that, right? So this is about remaining passionate about your purpose, but for the sake of impact versus for the sake of this specific outcome. Yes, we all want to make money, right? We all want to profit with our purpose. We all want to create a ripple of impact. We want to have clients. We want to achieve all these great things. But if you continue to focus on the outcomes and dismiss the impact, then you're definitely going to start to experience depression and anxiety, because things aren't always going to go your way. You're not always going to achieve the outcomes that you set out to achieve. So focus on impact versus the outcome. So that's it for today's episode and this edition of Thursday's Thought. I really hope that this provides you with some insights as to what you may be experiencing or what someone you know may be experiencing. And if you want more on this topic, you can head to episode number 12 of my podcast, and that's where I speak with Cam Adair about the highs and lows of entrepreneurship. It's a really phenomenal conversation. You can also listen to episode 16 with my former coach, Amateo Ra, where we talk about leadership and how we can often feel depressed and anxious in our roles as leaders. And then, of course, episode 50 of my podcast is where I talk about how to manage depression and anxiety as an entrepreneur. And I give some tips that I've used. I've given you a few things here, but there's some more stuff there in episode 50. And then again, if you are interested in learning more about my story, just head over to episode 1 of the podcast. If this episode helped you in any way, please share it on your social media, share it with your friends. The more people that we have talking about this in our industry, the less we're going to feel alone in this. So share it. Thank you so much for joining me for another edition of Thursday's Thought on today's Thought Leader, where I'm challenging you to rise up, speak up, and create a movement. If you are a purpose-driven entrepreneur and you are ready to gain visibility and become the thought leader that you know you're here to be, to bring your message to the masses, I invite you to enroll for my advanced digital training, Unleashed and Unapologetic, How to Become a Thought Leader and Create a Cult Following. You can find all the details for that at rubyfremont.com/unleashed. And finally, be sure to drop a rating and a review on iTunes. Please, this would be so helpful. I do this podcast because I'm very passionate about spreading this message. And so the more eyes we get on the podcast, the bigger the ripple of impact becomes. So drop a rating and a review on iTunes. And if you have any questions or you just want to share your story with depression, anxiety, and with me, or some of your tips, feel free to say hi and stop on over in my social media. My IG and Twitter handle is @IamRuby. You can also follow me on Facebook. And then, of course, check back on Monday for a brand new episode of today's Thought Leader. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.